Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Research Radar. Today, we're going to be breaking down some nutritional stuff rather than going into direct Q&As about peptides. This is more about the base, actually setting up a diet and getting the nutritional foundation down. Because a lot of people get into peptides without knowing how many calories they're eating, maintenance calories, carbs, fats, proteins. So, me and Gavin are going to break down the entire nutritional breakdown side of things, but also how to find your maintenance calories originally. So, Gavin, what are we going to start out with?
Honestly, I would just say, um, when it comes to calories and everything, I would say learning how to track calories is gonna be the best way to do things if you're trying to optimize when it comes to, like, losing weight, maintaining your weight. Just having a good idea of how many calories, the macronutrients that are in certain items, because that's pretty drastic for a lot of people when they figure out, like, Chick-fil-A sauce has 140 calories per 2 tablespoons with, like 15 grams of fat in it, and they're putting it a ton on it in all their meal or on their meal and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that can be one of the most, like, daunting things. So, like, getting a baseline of how to track calories is probably where I'd start with when it
I
comes to setting up a diet.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I remember when I first started, I think I tracked in my Fitness Pal for probably 4 or 5 years. I jumped in between like my Fitness Pal
Mhm.
chronometer is a great one if you want like micronutrients. That's also like free. There's a bunch of them out there. There's like paid ones. You don't have to go with the paid one. You can go with a free one. What I
I
would
use
recommend,
Macro Factor, but I always recommend Chronometer because
yeah,
it's free. You can track your micronutrients and everything on there.
yeah, and they have, there's certain ones that have cute like label scanners and like you can just scan in the nutritional label. The main thing, just make sure the calories and the macros are matching up what's on the app to what you actually have. I would recommend everybody gets a food scale, especially for
Yep,
weighing
that's where I
out
was gonna go.
things like rice, oats, protein, sauces in general. You'll kind of learn, but there's different methods to do it all. Like, especially when I do it, like one of my favorite meals is Greek yogurt with protein powder, throw a little bit of berries and like almond butter, like peanut butter. You'll never realize like how many calories are in a scoop of peanut butter or almond butter until you put it on the scale, tear it out to zero, and then so what I do is I grab the jar of almond butter, whatever, put it on the scale, tear it to 0, and then I'll put my spoon in, see how many grams are coming out because you want, you know, I always recommend you guys go grams if you want the most precise out of everything. You can do ounces and stuff like that. It might still be off a little bit, but just get in the habit of actually doing that with the meals you make yourself. It is okay. Like you're gonna have meals where you go out and you're not gonna be able to track to the gram or anything like that. Don't make it, so obsessive. I've been there. I think we've all been there where try to weigh everything out and then it becomes a hassle. If you're going to like Chick-fil-A or like Panda Express or something like that, try to just pick the healthier options and they have calories. It's not going to be accurate. Pretty, the sizes and portions are all going to be different. So the main thing I would say, just get in the habit of doing it. If you can nail that for 80% of your food off the
Right.
beginning, that's going to be a huge mover. Do you have any tips for we can go more into like uncooked, cooked for like proteins and stuff like that, but do you have any like general tips when it comes to the food scale and starting that process?
A good thing that people don't always realize is that when they are getting like prepackaged items, so the serving size and the grammage amount for the serving size is always going to be what is the like for what's in a package. It is going to be going based off of how they package it. So for raw ground beef, if you buy it at the grocery store, the nutrition label for that ground beef is for the raw version of the ground beef. So you need to make sure you can track it either way. You can track it cooked or raw, but there's going to be different caloric amounts for those because obviously when you cook it, you're going to be losing some of that water in the food and it's going to be dehydrating then. So you just need to be making sure you're tracking it consistently, either raw or cooked each time you make that food or dish.
Yeah.
Um, Another one would be to just like with the peanut butters and stuff, you need to be making sure like those are the things that I would be more, kind of hard about tracking the specific down to the absolute gram because those are especially when it's things like fats, it's really hard to go straight off the eyeball. And 99% of people, if they don't know how to track calories or have done in the past, are going to be way overdoing sauces and wondering why they're not in a deficit, not losing weight. It's because they're not tracking properly. So,
Yeah, and I would say once you start to track, you're not gonna wanna use sauces or little things like that, like, it's just a mental thing. As soon as you see how many calories it takes up for the amount that you actually need for, like, the food to taste good or the amount of sauce you want to use, you'll start going towards those lower calorie options. For sauces, at least, I know I'm in the if a calorie is, like, above, like, t or if sauce is above 20 calories, I don't really touch it because it's not worth it. So you find the ones that you like and you don't like, and honestly, a lot of the times I'll either just salt my meals a little bit more, or, like, season it a little bit more than use sauces because of that.
and there's some good options for sauces. Like I like some of the GQs. I will use the some of the flavor gang sauces. They're pretty
I
expensive.
I was gonna say
New sauce is pretty
I
expensive,
just ordered
but
some for Memorial Day, the Flavor Gang, like, sauces
yeah,
because
yeah, they're good. They are
they're
expensive though.
expensive. They're expensive because they're made for bodybuilders pretty much, so they're
Right.
5 to, 15, 20 calories for all of them, and you only get, like, a little
They are
bottle for,
really
like,
good. Yeah.
that being expensive, but they're pretty good. The takeout sauce is probably my favorite from that one.
I like
Um,
that one a lot too. Yeah. I think that is
I
actually my favorite from when I had it.
it can go on chicken. I literally sometimes will do, like, eggs and ground beef in the morning. I can even put on like that. It goes with anything, which is pretty good. But yeah, so sauce is definitely something to keep your eye on because that's one that catches a lot of people off guard.
Another
Uh,
one if would be I would say creamer. A lot of people
yes.
don't under
Yep.
realize or understand how many calories are in their daily coffee that they're drinking. So, if you go to Starbucks, a lot of the times, if you're getting anything other than just like a black coffee with maybe some almond milk or just regular milk in it, you're probably putting creamer in. If you're getting something like a latte or a frappuccino, those can range, even smalls to mediums can range up 4 to 500 calories per
Oh,
drink,
easily,
and
easily.
you get no satiation from liquids virtually. So you're
Yeah.
having a large spike of your caloric intake for breakfast, and you're not getting very much satiation from that.
If
And when we
anything, it's
talk
making you
about
crave more sugar with, like,
right,
that
right,
creamer.
right,
So, yeah.
and, satiation is just, pretty much how filling or how full you get from a meal and how long that meal is going to satiate you for the time being until you get hungry again, so
Right. Yeah, so, honestly, there is more options now, with, like, Starbucks and, like,
right.
Dunkin', like, that stuff, like, they have the sugar-free syrups and stuff. That's still you have to account for it. They're good about putting, like, the calories in the app, but you don't know how much that person behind the counter is actually putting in there. So, you could ask for 2 pumps of sugar-free vanilla, they could put 3 or 4, then they're not measuring, as accurate as you would measure. So, if you're making your coffee, I would say try to do it at home and use creamer in general sparingly. Go with the sugar-free one if you can. And don't use a ton of, like, milk or almond milk, like, a splash is pretty much, like, all you need. So, like, coffee is, like, one thing I was in it a little bit when I was, like, constantly in the office every single day, but I just, like, make my own at work or before I left because it can add up too quickly, and it's one of those things, like, I don't even want to risk going there and, like, messing up my diet and, like, not knowing, what they're putting in it because every time it is a little bit different.
Right. So, I mean, do you wanna talk about, like, some
Yeah,
tips on how to set up some meals and, like, how what you should be prioritizing? I can start with that if you
so
want.
So before we go into that, we talked about why it's so important to track your food and some of the ones that can kind of catch you off guard. To be honest, once you start tracking, just see what you're eating on a daily basis. Don't
Right.
try to go right into a diet phase or try to set up, your calories. You want to kind of find your maintenance. If you haven't been losing weight, a lot of people are in stalls. That's kind of, the most commonly reported thing. Or maybe you're losing 1 pound a week. Just track what you're eating currently and see if your weight's going down or it's going up. Track for at least a week. A week's like a good point where, as long as you're consistent and not having 1 day of excessive calories or like 1 day of excessive like under eating, you'll kind of get a baseline of where you're at day to day. And that's going to be the most important that you don't cheat like that first week because a lot of people will be like, oh, I'm starting to track. I'm going to get right into my diet. I'm going to drop all these calories out. You don't need to know where your baseline is. That's the most important part of this whole thing. And that's what you're trying to figure out while tracking. From that point, once you know like a solid baseline, let's say you tracked for a week, nothing really happens, maybe drop 300 calories out of that, right? As you start to put some of these meals we'll talk about together. And the key is not to make drastic jumps. You want to do like anywhere from 300 to 400, 500 calories, not more than that, because you don't want to be eating so little that it ends up burning you at the end
Right.
of the day.
So I would also say that like a pound a week is roughly 3,500 calories because we know that to lose a pound of fat, it's roughly going to be 3,500 calories in a deficit per week. And a pound per week is honestly a great target for most people. I wouldn't suggest going deeper than that unless you've dieted before in the past because then it can become harder and become a little bit more unsustainable. But if you're losing a pound a week, that's generally a great, you know, people think that's not fast enough or they need to be losing weight much faster, but that's going to be a sustainable approach for so many people.
For
And
sure.
when you want to figure out your TDEE or your maintenance calories, there are some calorie sites that you can use that'll give you a general estimate ballpark. You put in your activity level. I would always
Right.
suggest going lower on the activity level because most people aren't as active as they actually think they are. So you put in your activity level, your age, uh, how tall you are, how much you weigh currently. It'll give you a shoot. It'll shoot you out a number. It'll be plus or minus what it actually would be because everybody's going to be different, obviously. So you could just go around that calorie amount, and then if you're not losing weight, then you can, like you said, subtract 300 to 400 calories and then go from there. So a lot of people in the first week or 2, they're going to drop a significant amount of weight, like 3 to 7 pounds a lot of the time, and they're gonna be like, "Wow, I'm gonna be dropping so much weight. I'm in such a large caloric deficit."
Right.
When in reality, this a lot of this weight loss initially is going to be coming from water weight because when you are eating less carbohydrates and eating less in general, less food volume, you're going to be holding less water, and that is going to come off quickly. And then once you get to 1 to 2 weeks later, you're going to start actually losing weight at a pace that is normal for you. So that first week or two could be it most likely is going to be one off, and that's just something you have to be aware about.
Yeah, it's a good thing to mention because a lot of people start to clean up their diets when they actually start tracking their food, and you'll realize a lot of the sodium that you're eating from processed foods is not going to be there. So that swing that Gavin's talking about with that 4 to 7 pounds, a lot of it is going to be excess water that you're holding on to, whether that's inflammation or it's just your sodium intake was so high. The higher sodium intake is, and your electrolytes aren't balanced, you're going to be holding on to some extra water. So you'll have to realize if you do go like the whole foods route with a lot of stuff after you start tracking, you'll have to salt your meals a little bit more to stay hydrated with like electrolytes. And it's not a bad thing. Like everybody's like salt, cholesterol, whatever. Like no, if you're eating clean, you're gonna need some salt, especially if you're sweating, you're active, you're doing cardio, stuff like that. So that's one thing to keep in mind. That's like a common pitfall for a lot of people is they'll start to feel like, dehydrated or whatever like that if you're tracking and you're completely accurate. I think it's a lot easier now with, some of the peptides and stuff that we have in play to stick to those diets. So especially if someone's
Right.
never dieted before, you don't know all the random things you would have run into if you just did it without, a GLP kind of thing. So I think that's good. We can get into some like base macros and stuff. Let's say you just figure out your total caloric intake, but you're in the gym, you either want to recomp as you're losing weight or just, maintain some muscle or put on some muscle in that process. Just talking like macros for general guidelines, we'll start probably the easiest one to do is protein for 99% of people. This one's pretty stagnant. We know anywhere from like 1 gram to like 1.2. Some people push that up to like 1.5 grams per pound of body weight. So if you're 180 pounds, 180 grams of protein, you can push that up a little bit more. That'll give you some more satiation if you want,
Mhm.
especially in a deficit. More protein is not a bad thing. I think there is a point of diminishing returns when you just try to go too much protein and neglect some like carbs and fats in that process, which we'll talk about. But a baseline, I would just say for 99% of people, hit a gram per pound, especially in a deficit, you're going to be fine. If you want to optimize, 1.2 grams per pound, it would be a good starting spot. Um, you have any, like, thoughts on how people should space that, or, any thoughts on, like, how much they should be eating?
So when it comes to spacing macros,
Yeah,
it's going to be a little bit more specific for things like carbs. Um, but overall total daily intake is going to matter the most overall for pretty much everybody that's going to be listening to this. So as long as you're not getting all of your protein in from one meal, it's going to be digested fairly well. You're going to have muscle protein synthesis going throughout the day. If you're eating two to th- it, three meals, some people like to do two larger meals. I like to
I would
keep
say 3 to
satiation with
4.
3 to
Th
4 meals typically
Right.
per day, just to keep that muscle protein synthesis going the whole day. But, yeah, protein, it's not the hardest when it comes to timing and whatnot, just making sure you're getting in your goal gram amount, and then, just going from there, spacing out 3 to 4 meals.
Yeah, and I would honestly space it pretty evenly. Like, let's just say, let's just say a 160-pound person, right? Like, if you're 160 pounds, I'd probably just do 40, 40, 40, 40. So, 44x per day. Um, and it can be timed like a little bit differently. With the carbs, I think it'll matter the most of that timing. But if you can kind of space that out, that's going to be the most optimal for digestion. You have to remember too, like, whatever you're eating is all, if it's like giving you well, the best thing I can say, because people are like, "Oh, what should I avoid?" Whatever, it's gonna be whatever foods work well for you and digest well for you, because everybody has different gut bacterias, right? So,
Mhm.
if something is really giving you, I know for me personally, like, at one point, I couldn't do any Greek yogurt because it was really, it has, like, probiotics and stuff. On paper, it's supposed to be great, but I was getting really bad acne. I was getting, like, I just, felt, like, crappy, like, an hour after I was eat it. Something was there, like, enzyme-wise, where I just couldn't digest it properly. So, I took that out. You can just tell the meals that feel a little bit lighter, that kinda digest nice and smooth, kinda that'll go into how many fats are in those meals and different stuff like that too. But in general, whatever makes you feel the best day to day, that's the protein sources you should go with. I like to mix it up a little bit of, just for to kind of get all the amino acids and micronutrients and vitamins and stuff like that. I like to have different protein sources throughout the day. So like the morning, I'll have something like, I like to do like some egg whites, like 2 whole eggs. I'll throw in some egg whites and ground beef is kind of like my breakfast. And then, I could have like sourdough or something. You can add on some carbs to that. I'm just talking protein sources right now. And then meal 2 might be something like, that might be before I go to the gym or something like that. So that might be maybe Greek yogurt with some protein powder, something that's easily digestible, if that's easily digestible for you. When I get back, then I might have some, like, chicken as protein. So, like, chicken rice when I get back from the gym, something that's, not too high in fat, just a good amount of protein. You can go from there. And then the last meal can be dependent based on, who, like, where I am, what I'm doing. Could be chicken, could be beef, it could be whatever. You just want, like, a
Right.
variety of protein sources. So I don't know
And
how you space yours.
I think that helps with keeping the diet kind of easier to sustain too. Because if you're
Yeah.
eating chicken and rice every meal, obviously you're going to be hitting your macronutrients, but you're not going to hit it all those micronutrients, and it's just not going to be as easy to sustain to, because who
It's good, you're gonna
most
wanna
people don't
cheat,
want to
right?
eat the same thing
Yeah.
every single meal. So, like you said, having the variety while still keeping the meals, based around your goals is allowing you to stick to it better. So that's going to help so many people. So typically what I do for my meals is based on my work schedule for the day, I kind of have to maneuver, my meals a little bit, but I'll I'll do fasted cardio, and then I will have a fast digesting, either cream of rice, a little bit of protein in there. I like to keep the fats low in the morning because I will typically go work out around midday, and then I'll have my fats later in the day just because, I don't wanna have digestion going while I'm mid-workout, because then you feel kinda heavy and it's still taking away blood flow from your workout because the blood is going into your digestive tract to digest that food.
Yeah, so let's
So
pause right here for a second, because this is a good point going into, we can talk about, I guess, carbs and carbs and fats, these are the 2 other macros that you're gonna have to balance out.
Mhm.
You're gonna have to there's a base level of fats you're gonna need for hormone production, especially if just you're not on any exogenous hormones, anything like,
Right. I was gonna
TRT
yeah.
or anything like that. So, for most guys, and you can correct me, like, just an easy number is, like, in, like, the 40 to 50 gram range. Some people need a little bit. Some people feel better on a little bit higher. It's gonna be dependent on the person. I found for me, that's around, like, 50 to 55 grams of fat, I feel pretty good. If
Yeah.
I go any lower than that, I can feel that I'm just a little bit slower. I don't have and that could be the food sources too that you're getting that fat from, because that's highly dependent. If you're getting it from high quality meat sources or eggs that have more, like, micronutrients in it, that's going to help with those fats. But anywhere from, like, 55 grams, that's where I can feel, mental clarity, stuff like that, without feeling too sluggish.
Yeah, typically, I will recommend like zero point 0.3 to 0.45 grams of fat per pound of body weight. So usually, like you said, it roughly comes out to 45 to 60 grams of fat for most people, and that's just going to be a perfectly fine range for most people. I would suggest getting in some omega-3 fatty acids in
Yeah.
somewhere if you need to supplement it. Preferably, I will do a either a mackerel or a salmon each day to get my fatty
Yeah.
acids in,
Love salmon.
and
Yeah.
and it's just going to be good for I've talked about it before in some breakdowns and whatnot, brain health, hormonal production if you're natural,
Mhm.
just overall function in general. And like you said, those higher quality fats are going to satiate you and you are going to feel better. It's going to be better for your skin and pretty much just better for you in general than some getting your fats from saturated fats through like fast food and fried food and whatnot.
Right. Right, 100%. So that's just like a base level of fat you need to kind of function,
Right.
produce your hormones naturally. And beyond that, some people like to go the keto route, some people like to go other routes. I'm a big fan. So if you're in the gym, like weight training, you're gonna need carbohydrates to restore glycogen. That's just, in my opinion, the keto diet can be great for some people, but long term, I just don't think it's great. We've talked about that before on, like, discussions and stuff. It's really gonna be up to you. Some people like it during a fat loss phase 'cause it just helps them keep their diet at bay. Um, but I do think there's a place for carbohydrates, and this is where, you know, if implemented properly, you can kind of avoid stalls for timing your carbohydrates. So just around your workout window specifically, if you kind of, whatever carbohydrate intake you have, let's just say it's gonna depend on what your maintenance is, how many calories you're burning per day. You still wanna be in a deficit, but you don't wanna be in such a deficit you're not getting enough carbs to fuel your
Right.
workout. So for what I'd like to do is I will still space my carbs out. Let's just say I have 150 grams of carbs to work with throughout the day. A lot of times it's higher than that now, like 200, 250 grams of carbs. But if I have 150 grams, I might time that. Let's say I'm working out, after meal one or meal two for the day. I might put 50 grams of carbs in the morning just to do that. Maybe fit like a little bit of carbs pre-workout. Like, let's say you have something quick on the way to the gym. You have like a banana or something
Mhm.
like that, like 25 grams of carbs. Then on the last meal right after your workout, so, you worked out, you're coming to eat your post-workout meal, let's say it's chicken rice, you probably want to have, a third of your carbohydrates, anywhere from like 50 grams. I would probably put like 50 grams right in that post-workout meal and then space whatever carbs I have left, that last 25 grams in the third or fourth meal of the day. You want to front load the carbs a little bit so you have enough to get through the workout, and then you want to recover a little bit. So I always do probably my highest carb meal right after my workout.
Yeah, that's typically what I do for the most part too, because right after the workout, you want to immediately start getting your muscles and your body into a recovery state and having that
Yeah.
big spike of carbohydrates, preferably faster digesting if you can, because it's going to allow your body to uptake those nutrients into muscle glycogen a little bit faster, a little bit lower in fiber and fat in that meal, but
S
fiber and fat are they're okay in your post-workout meal. I would lower them even more in your pre-workout just because of the
yeah,
digestion thing I was talking about.
I would
But yeah,
say
like you said,
for some good options there, like cream of rice, regular
yep.
rice, basically you can look at the nutrition label, anything that doesn't have a ton of fats or fiber
Even
mixed in.
even something like a fast digesting cereal or
Yep.
something like that. Just some quick sugars, like some right maybe if pre-workout you use couple Rice Krispie treats and maybe a banana, like you said. It's just something
Yeah.
quick to get the
Fruit can be
glycogen.
great in that
Fruit is
post-workout
great.
meal
Yeah.
too. Yeah,
Mhm.
so a lot of people are scared of, like, sugar and stuff like that,
Yeah.
especially naturally occurring sugars, like, you're gonna need like, honestly, just to keep the diet a little bit sustainable, I think fruit, you can get that kinda sweetness out of it, whether you throw that in cream of rice, oatmeal, Greek yogurt, something like that, or you just have it by itself, so even like a banana, but I'm talking more like strawberries, blackberries, raspberries, like, those have a lot of, like, antioxidants and nutrients in
Right.
them too, so that's a great thing to throw in. Don't just look at it as macro for macro sugar. It's more if it's naturally occurring sugar and you're getting some antioxidants out of it, I think that's a great thing and will help you stay on track more long term.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You wanna talk
So
a little bit about, fat and fiber, how they play a role or into it?
yeah. So overall, fiber wise, it's going to be very important that you get some type of fiber in your diet because a lot of people, when they start tracking, they will kind of cut fiber out depending on the food sources, especially if they're doing a lot of that chicken and rice diet, the standard regular diet. Some good fiber sources can be potatoes have a good amount of fiber in it, especially if you go with something like a sweet potato. Oats have a good amount of fiber. You're gonna want I don't remember the numbers exactly. I always went with
Um,
like an upper threshold of like 25. If you can get anywhere from like 15 to 25 grams of fiber, depending on the person, it's gonna be
the
enough to kind of keep things moving.
the RDA for fiber, uh, it's roughly 14 grams per 1,000 calories you're eating, so for males, they typically like you to get around 30 to 35 grams of fiber in a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, some great options, like you said, some oats, potatoes, uh, cauliflower, broccoli are pretty
Yeah.
decent options. Just, some leafy greens, lettuce is going to be good, carrots, classic vegetables and stuff. I would like to use cauliflower rice if I'm pretty deep into a cut,
Yeah.
just for volume and whatnot, and has a good amount of fiber in it. But yeah, fiber is going to be very important for keeping you satiated, and it's going to be a very important tool for just overall gut motility, especially because it is going to keep you quote unquote regular and having you digest those meals properly. You're going to be getting better bowel movements, and fiber is actually linked to brain cognition with your gut microbiome if you're getting enough of it. So,
And the one thing I'd watch out for too is don't just throw fiber like to
right.
insane amounts too quickly because a lot of people try
Don't.
to do this with the high carb or like the low carb tortillas have a bunch of fiber in
Hmm.
them, and someone will eat like two or three of those a day, and that's like 45 grams of fiber.
Yeah.
That can also have the
Definitely
opposite
go up
effect
slowly.
where then gut motility kind of slows down, things just kind of get dysregulated. So I would maybe increase, you know, 3 to 5 grams of fiber every week or so as you're titrating that up to the amount you wanna be at. Like I said, I think for me, I found like 25 to like 30 grams of fiber is a good spot. It's kind of like where I like to stay. Like for some people, it's just gonna depend how you tolerate it and as long as things are moving smoothly, especially it is difficult to get in late in a cut when you don't have like a ton of calories, but it's very important from the satiation aspect of things, especially if you're just going whole foods and not, throwing in a high calorie or high fiber tortilla or anything like that.
Another thing about fiber is that, if you're not getting enough fluid and hydration, it's going to not keep you regular and it could actually constipate you. So if you are titrating it up, I would suggest getting in more fluid because fiber is going to bring water into the colon. And if you don't bring more water into the colon, it's not going to flush that fiber out. So you're going to be feeling bloated, digestion's not going to be good, and you're not going to, it could actually constipate you. So, yeah, getting more fiber, you're going to need to get more water, electrolytes, and hydration in as well.
100%. Yeah, so that's a good point from the fiber aspect. I would probably throw that in the meals after, like, if you're
Mhm.
working out in the morning, later in the day, so,
Yep.
you can kinda keep everything moving smoothly because you want that initial meal to digest pretty quickly. So you have, those built up like the glycogen stores and they're ready to use for the workout. Post workout, you want to, get those carbs in so you can recover. Like you can start those recovery processes
Mhm.
as quick as possible. And then, this is how I like to time my stuff too with the fats is if I am working out in the morning, I'll leave some of those fattier meals towards the end of the day with some more fiber in there. So then you get two satiation points. If you have a little bit more Fat, like, you're gonna find if you do work out in the morning, you hit a high carb meal with low fiber, low, overall fat levels, and then you hit another one post-workout to start that, you're gonna be pretty hungry for that other meal relatively quickly. Probably, like, an hour or for me, it's always, like, an hour post that post-workout meal that I'm, like, ready to eat again because I've had, like, no fats in me, no fiber in me, and then you can kinda add those in so you're more satiated and less likely to go off the diet towards the end of the day. Um so yeah, overall, like fat levels, and I would just kind of space that out evenly too at the fat levels. Like, let's just say you have your first two meals pre and post workout, then you have two more throughout the day. I would probably throw, if you're having 20, 25 grams of fat or whatever, like you're going to have trace amounts of fats in the previous meals. It's probably going to
Right.
come out to maybe like 15 to 20 grams for those last two
Mhm.
meals, but I would just kind of space those evenly. If you are doing 5 meals a day, it's more the bodybuilding side. I think four is a good point for most people, but I would just
Yeah.
space it kinda evenly. Don't have I don't You don't wanna save all those fats for the last meal of the day because then you could
Yeah.
have, some trouble sleeping with that
Yeah.
stuff if all that food's sitting in your stomach.
Digestion, yeah. Plus, if you're digesting a ton of food while you sleep, then your body's not getting into that restful state because you're actually actively going through digestion. Your heart rate's going to be a bit higher and you're not going to be getting as much rest. Deep sleep isn't going to be as beneficial. So, yeah, like you said, uh, if you can, I would just space it out, like literally how you just said to do so, and you're going to be you tailor it. You once you go through this process, you tailor it to your needs, change it
Right.
up how you need to. Everybody's gonna be a bit different. So
It's gonna be very schedule dependent and what you can adhere to. I think the main takeaways are protein, try to keep it a gram per pound or a little bit higher. You're gonna have to with fats, like what we talked about, zero point 0.3 gram to, 0.45, zero point 0.5, like anywhere in there. Time those two things or, measure those two things out first and kind of make those staples, and then you'll see what carbs you have left to
yep,
play with
carbs the
in that
variable.
process. That's the variable because you still want, like I said, enough carbs to fuel your workout and fuel what you're doing throughout the day. However, you still want to be in a deficit for most people. If you're,
Mhm.
in a bulk, then you might have carbs with every meal, or, then you would just play with the numbers a little bit. If you're in a deficit, you might have to pull carbs from the last meal of the day because they're not really that needed at the end. It's all gonna depend on your schedule when you're working out. For overall numbers, keep it pretty simple. Like I said, measure those 2 out first, protein, fats, see how many carbs you have left to play with, and that's when you titrate the numbers up and down a little bit depending on your goals. If you're stalled, you might have to look at pulling some carbs out, or maybe you pull, a little bit of fat here and there. If you're, trying to gain weight, you might have to up the carbohydrates a little bit or even, up the fats. But at a very basic level, find your maintenance, measure out your protein, your fat, see what carbs you have left to play with, and then just get consistent with that for a period of time, I think is my best advice in
Yeah,
general.
and we'll in future podcasts, we'll get into more of the nuances of specific micro and macronutrients, bodybuilding, that type of thing. But for this, we just wanted to get, some of these nutritional tips out for you guys and make sure that you have a little bit of something to go off of for when you're starting. And then for next time, comment some ideas or some of the questions you might have, and we'll try to get a little bit more specific about like
For sure.
tips and that kind of thing. But yeah, we just wanted to get this out to make sure you guys had a little bit of something to go off of.
Yeah, and we dropped like a little, hints of stuff that we'll talk about in
Right.
like future episodes with, timing and everything like that. I
Food
know some
sources.
food sources. I know some people are gonna ask, so to be honest, like,
Mhm.
I'll just go through my normal day. If I had everything completely optimized in the way I wanted it to, just so people have, like, a baseline schedule if they want to go a little bit, try to build their schedule off something that would be optimal if they have something similar. Like you, I like to do fasted cardio in the morning, whether that's a
Mhm.
walk or I'm waiting on a walking pad to come into, so whether,
Right.
I hop on the laptop and do some work or even watch like a YouTube video for the first 20 minutes of the day. A 20 to 30-minute like little walk is enough. It's going to depend on what your cardio needs are. I like to do that first thing in the morning. After that, I'd shower, eat my first meal. Kind of, if I'm going to go hit the gym, I like to have like one or two meals in me. So let's just say, I eat something, then I'll work for an hour or two if my schedule allows it. Then After that first meal digest, I'd have something little on my way to the gym, like a banana, Rice Krispie treat, whatever. After that, come back. Typically, it's like a chicken and rice meal right after that. Wait an hour or 2. I'll have my 3rd meal of the day. After that 3rd meal of the day, that could be any protein source plus any carb source if I still have some left, and then my last meal of the day will be spaced probably 3, 4 hours after that, and then to give me enough time to process all that food I had in from the previous meal and give myself, like, 2 hours before I go to bed just to get some digestion in, and then if there's any GH secretagogues in the picture, just to give that enough time as well.
Yeah,
So
and we'll
that's kinda
talk
my
about a
schedule.
little bit of the timing for peptides and PEDs and whatnot in the future,
Right.
like you just mentioned with some of the GH secretagogues, actual GH and whatnot. But yeah,
Mhm.
that's a great example of a diet that you found works for you and can be easily sustainable over time as well. So
Right.
I'll should I do mine or should I wait until another episode to just
I
give
think
a good.
I think you throw yours out there because people are gonna be curious.
So pretty much my morning is the same as you. I'll do fasted cardio. I'll do some work. I usually am always doing work like on my phone or I have a standing desk, so I'll
Yeah.
use my laptop and just get out some of the stuff that I have to do, some of the writing and some of the research that I do early in the morning. Or come home or not come home. If I go to the gym, I have some cardio equipment here at my house, so I'll either do it here at the gym. Most of the time, it's here. Come home, shower. I'll do some creamer rice, just some fast digesting carbs, a little bit of protein, a little bit of fats because I don't go to the gym right after. So I'll go to the gym and then come home. I'll do typically either a something quicker because I'd like to get straight back into that flow state of work. So I'll
Yeah.
do like a Greek yogurt meal with some berries, a little bit of protein powder, like you said, a little bit of nut butter to slow down digestion.
Yeah.
And then for my dinner, I'll typically do either a salmon or a mackerel. I really like to put that over some rice, a little bit of low calorie sauce. A lot of times I'll throw in some eggs, about 4 to 5 eggs in there,
Yeah.
and then that's around 3 PM, 4 PM. I'll eat again another meal at 6, and then I'll have my last meal at my meal number 4 is it's typically the same exact
Yeah.
thing as number, 3 because it's just easy and I enjoy it a lot, and then I'll usually have either a Ninja Creamy to end off the night, if I need to hit more protein, and then or I'll have something a little bit different.
Right.
But usually it's a little bit it's that last meal is pretty balanced between protein, fats, and carbs. Just that's just how it lines up for me the rest of the day. It digests well, and then I'll give it, like you said, some time before bed so it digests well, and I'm getting that restful sleep when I get into bed. And then, yeah, it's easy, sustainable. I can go through the macros and whatnot. Um,
Yeah,
but
we can do, like, further breakdowns in, like, future episodes with
right,
exactly, like,
yeah,
what, you know, eating kinda based on the goals and how those macros align and stuff
right,
like
yeah.
that.
That's a great idea.
So,
But yeah,
yeah,
like you
no.
said, you just gotta find something that works for you, and then over time, you're gonna have to change it and adjust based on digestion, some things like that. I noticed that I can do egg whites now, but I couldn't in the past because they just didn't digest well for me. So I had to
1,000%.
completely cut out egg whites for a good period of time because I was having them a lot for a
Yeah,
long period of time. So I had to cut them out for a couple months, and then I reintroduced them back in slowly, and now I'm able to digest them well again. So it's just something you have to play around with and, change over time.
for sure, for sure, yeah, I think this was a great intro episode, honestly, I messaged Gavin right before this, and I was like, "Let's do something different that's not just a peptide Q&A.
And it's a
Let's
great
do
idea
so."
too.
Yeah, because I think we can mix these in, and, I like to talk about because that's what I did way before I even got in, like, the research space. I kind of over you know, over fascinated on all this stuff for probably a good 2, 3
I
years.
think it's
So,
my favorite topic, to be quite
yeah.
honest. Nutrition, I love talking nutrition. It's just
Yeah.
not always the most glamorous thing for a lot of people,
No.
It doesn't bring in the most eyes.
For sure, but I think we have a good, a good audience that would benefit from it,
Right.
and
Oh, of
we can go
course.
deeper. Like a lot of the stuff, like I'm sure the people that have kind of been tracking this stuff, you guys know, but even I listen to these podcasts and kind of nod my head and be
Oh,
like,
yeah.
okay, that's
You can
exactly
always
what I
learn
went through.
something, always.
So, yeah, this was a great starter one. Like I said, we'll go more in depth. Just wanted to get this out for you guys, and yeah, I'm hoping to have this out either Tuesday or Wednesday. So we'll see. All right, guys, that is it for this episode of Research Radar. We will be back. Comment down below what topics you want us to cover outside of nutrition and stuff like that, and we will definitely cover it. So, thank you guys. Gavin, appreciate you. We'll see you guys in the next one.